Welcome to the Ashes Review with me, Declan Hooper, from sunny Queensland, Phil Dillon, and from another world, Richard Hanson.
Yeah, it's good to be with you again. Yeah, I'm currently broadcasting from my parents' car. Thus is the dedication that I have to this podcast for many reasons, many of which are not in my control. But it's nice to see you guys.
Happy New Year, boys! Before we start,
England haven't lost a Test match this year. It's great.
Oh, wow.
It can't get any worse than last year, can it, Phil?
Not really. No, we might even get Ricky Ponting to be our coach by the end of this year, which I somewhat doubt. But there you go.
Yeah, I do wonder about that because he was approached, wasn't he? Didn't they talk about how he was approached last year?
Yeah.
That he didn't want to dedicate, whatever it is, 300 days a year away from home, blah blah blah. But like if you're only a Red Bull, if they manage to split the coaching team up and maybe only coaches Test cricket, then maybe it's a workable solution. But could you really see Ricky Ponting in an England tracksuit? I think he'd have to give his Australian passport back.
I'd like to see it, but I don't think. I don't think.
Sure, he'd do great.
I think Gary Kirsten's the more viable option at the moment for English fans who I think. To be fair, I think Ricky Ponting's waiting for a certain Mr. JL to move on when he does, and he'll move seamlessly into that seat, which is ominous for English fans, I think.
And I think he'll do a bloody good job from a neutral perspective. Let me tell you.
It was funny actually because we can start on the with what happened in Melbourne. I think it's been a kind of a week or so to kind of digest it all, and I suppose I've kind of been, watching, different perspectives from different people. And I think, I don't know about what you guys think, but for me, it seems like there's been a lot of lazy journalism. Obviously, let's start off with England were very poor, especially in that second innings. Were probably one of the poorest touring sides we've seen in a while. But I do find that the journalism and the coverage afterwards has been very lazy in the sense that it's all about, passion for the shirt, heart, all this kind of talk, which is just, for me, the pitches in England, that was another one. For me, it's just, as I say, just lazy. I think you can be the most passionate England supporter or England player. And, if you're not getting time in the middle and you're just out of form and no confidence, then it makes no difference to me.
Yeah, it's interesting actually. I really truly think, and I say this with no agenda one way or the other. I really hope England get absolutely annihilated in the next two Test matches as well. And I'll tell you why. Because I genuinely think that is the only way that there will be able to be a full reset on red ball cricket in England. And you kind of have to hit rock bottom before it's always darkest before the dawn or whatever they say. But there was a bit of lazy journalism. I don't buy this passion for the shirt. Everyone who plays for England wants to be there. Was it Johnny Bairstow who came out in the middle of the Test match and had to say we're trying? Was it Johnny Bairstow? Was it Joe Root? Obviously we don't doubt that they're trying to do their best. But it's some of the obvious talking points that a lot of journalists have come out with. If you're going to play county cricket in April, when snow stops play, and in late September and October when bad light's going to stop playing 4:30, then I just don't see how they're going to be able to, understand how to play Test cricket for a long period of time. For me, that's the major issue, that there's no conveyor belt that is giving a real life situation to top order batters to make runs in the Test arena.
I've been thinking about it, and they're saying like the 4 years of planning. Don't forget the last two times that England have gone to Australia, they've lost 4-0 and 5-0. So you would have thought that these this recriminations would have been there definitely then. So why hasn't something, instead of looking at it then and saying what do we need to do to get Test cricket back on, they've gone, okay, we'll bring in this a shorter form of the game to make it even harder for players to play Test cricket, and put that in the middle of the season when, like you say, it's the height of English summer, when most countries around the world will be playing their 4-day game or whatever, but they play this game which is last because it's a revenue raising thing, and that's all it is, and that's all it's been since T20 got in as well. It's revenue raising, it's making money for players, which is fine. I'd want cricketers to get paid. Like I was one of the ones back in the 70s who wanted World Series cricket and stuff like that. And I was with all for that sort of thing, but not to the detriment of the greatest form of the game.
The thing is, like, I completely understand. I completely agree with you, Phil. And I think you said it as well when I made a comment, I think, to you fairly immediately after England capitulated and said, they play too much white ball cricket. There's too much emphasis on the white ball game. But not to wax lyrical about my own team, and I'm just about to, is that, New Zealand made the final with the T20 World Cup, the ODI World Cup, and won the Test Championship. So I think there is a formula. It is possible to be good at all three forms of the game. England's unfortunate, and they're one of the few. New Zealand to an extent, Australia partly, but like there is a period of the year where England cannot play cricket at home. Like it's physically impossible, right? Because England, because of winter is, you can't help what latitude you live on, right? Whereas, the subcontinent, and I know there's wet seasons and dry seasons, but you can pretty well play in the West Indies 12 months a year, South Africa, parts of Australia, India, Pakistan, you know what I mean? So it's difficult because England have only obviously got a 4 or 5 month window to play with. But they just kind of need to be a bit smarter about how they go about scheduling stuff.
The other thing, my personal opinion about it all, and look, I don't want to bag players or anything like that because they obviously are trying their best. There's no doubt they're not going out there to score 68 all out. They're not. I mean, no. They're not going out there to allow a journeyman cricketer to get 6 for 7,
Journeyman.
I don't honestly see how this one person selection works. That Chris Silverwood is the be all and end. Before he went to, he had James. I can't think of his name now. James Taylor and Ed Smith as his other selectors. Okay. Now, with Australia, they have Justin Langer, maybe George Bailey, and one other. Brad Haddon, who all three of those were successful Test cricketers who've know. Whereas you've got Chris Silverwood, who's at best an average county player and played a couple of Tests for England. Ed Smith played a couple of Tests for England. I know James Taylor was unfortunate. He might have lasted longer if he wasn't for his illnesses or whatever, concussion. But
the heart condition, wasn't it? I think it was a
heart condition. That's right. Yeah. But I don't think personally you can have one person making the calls. The captain of a Test team has to have a say in who he's playing with. Surely.
Yeah, I think he has to have a say, and also they can't. It's helpful to have some people next to you. Just even if you're the final decision maker, the final arbitrator, they're kind of like in your ear as a bit of an agony aunt. Just you can kind of bounce ideas off people. What I think England have gone wrong with selection wise this tour is they knew what sides they wanted to play back in 3 months ago. They were like, right, Test 1, Gabba, we're going to do this. We're going to win the toss and bat because Nasser Hussain's given us a ghost for the rest of our lives. And we're going to play this team, and I don't care what the weather's like and what the pitch is like. And then in Adelaide, we're going to put all our cards in that basket because we're going to pray it's going to swing around corners. You know what I mean? There wasn't any kind of like, okay, right, well, we've made these plans, but let's maybe just kind of tweak them a little bit because of what's up here and what's down here. Rather than like just having everything mapped out apparently 4 years in advance. Another interesting take I heard as well was, I wonder what you would hear about it is to bring in Owen Morgan for a year or two. It's a bit of a kind of out left field solution, but he doesn't seem to need validation from the coaching staff from any kind of
purely as a player. You mean?
No, obviously he will have to play, but purely as a captain. Just as some, because I mean Joe Root he's scoring lots of runs, but I do wonder about the ability, his ability to make decisions under pressure on the field.
Just to push back on both of them things slightly, I do agree with the selection. I think there's been clear selection issues for England, but then I would argue like they used something like 21 players in that batting order this year, right? they other than Joe Root, they've averaged 19 across the
nothing.
board.
Yeah.
Four of them. I mean, at some point, who do you pick? They've selected like the likes of Ollie Pope, who've scored runs in county cricket. They've selected on potential the likes of Zach Crawley and Hamid. Like they have gone to that well quite a lot. And I think the biggest thing for the selection is, and I think we were saying this a little while ago, I think after India, that like Zach Crawley, Johnny Besto come in after being out in the cold for 6 months. Of course they're not going to do well because they haven't had time and they don't have confidence because they're getting dropped after every 3 tests.
That's why you've got to give the players a little bit of a break because like they've been absolutely thrown under the bus by Chris Silverwood, and then he comes out and says, "I wouldn't do anything differently," and then he comes out and says all these sound bites saying, "I've got some positives to come out in the first 3 test matches."
What were they? I'd like to know.
I don't know what I'd like to know what they were. I mean, obviously, like Joe, there is a positive that Joe Root and David Malan were getting runs, but nobody else did. I just watched a replay of the Adelaide pink ball test from 4 years ago when where Alistair Cook was still captain, and the same things happened. England had Australia 5 down for nothing, and they allowed them to get 600 with Mitchell Marsh. This is how bad they were. Mitchell Marsh and Sean Marsh getting hundreds, and that's a tongue-in-cheek comment, obviously. But look, England got 400 in that test match, but they still gave away a deficit of 200 and whatever, and they lost it.
You're not going to win a test match if you can't score 400 consistently.
No.
Let alone 200, let alone 68. But I wonder if England might even want to consider something else as well. Is saying, right, we're not going to worry about what we score, but let's just try and bat for 150 overs. Let's just focus on time at the crease.
There have been some extenuating circumstances, which I think a lot of people. So England would have come to Australia. Their plan was to come to Australia with an attack of Ollie Stone, Jofra Archer, Mark Wood. All of those 3 bowlers consistently bowl over 140 k's an hour.
Yeah.
Now you take those 3 out of your pace attack, you then become a military medium. And then of course Moeen Ali throws the spanner in the works because he pulls out of Test cricket. So there's your spinner's gone, and plus another person can back down the order. So England's tail then becomes you have two spinners who have been at best county players over the last 2 years, and at worst not as good as that even because they're just they've been thrown in the deep end. So their plans like that if that was their plans, then their plans have been thrown into disarray. But you still had the batsman like Dom Sibley. I remember when we were berating him for scoring 28 runs in 220 balls. I'd like you, Richard. I would absolutely die for that at the moment. To be honest with you.
Yeah.
So that means the new ball has been nullified, and then your players like Joe Root and Ben Stokes and Josh Butler and Johnny Bairstow, etc., come in and do their stuff when the ball is soft and they can play. There are extenuating circumstances, but they haven't helped themselves by saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and I don't know what all this the batting on one leg in the nets was. I don't either. I'm not sure.
Mike Atherton made a good point. He said, if you're going to do that, do it somewhere where there's no cameras visible. But I hear what you're saying, Phil, and I absolutely agree. They were the seamers that they wanted to take to Australia who could bowl express pace and would suited to the wicket. But you also said you're right. Like the second cabs off those ranks are the kind of military medium guys. You contrast that with Australia, who have obviously got their main pace attack of Stark, Cummins, and Hazelwood, with Lyon obviously there as well. Then those 3 bowlers have had to be chopped and changed already through this series. We've seen, but then we've seen guys like Richardson and guys like Boland actually come in and take wickets and do well. That's the problem, I think, is that England don't. And I know it's difficult when you're a touring side and it's COVID and all that kind of thing, but it's always so much harder if you don't have kind of a plan B that you can kind of integrate into that initial plan. Because I think, England had some good plans. Well, one plan. But as soon as like a spanner went into the works for one reason, like COVID, weather, injuries, blah blah, bloody Pat Cummins had to isolate because of COVID. He didn't even get to captain one of the test matches. You know what I mean? So like that's where I think as well they've really struggled because they've not been quite nimble enough in modifying their plans to suit what is actually happening.
So just to elaborate on that, what you're saying about the plans, I think also it's a good example, and I think the Jeff Lemon uses the example of the horses for courses argument. So Scott Boland might never play another Test match again for Australia potentially.
Yeah. Him and Ajaz Patel need to have a beer if that's the case.
Yeah. But he came in on his own wicket. He knew well. He took a ton of wickets on the MCG and they blooded him in the best possible scenario for him. And look what he does, right? England, on the other hand, they use the example of Ben Duckett. Ben Duckett scored a lot of runs in April on green wickets in county cricket, and then they blood him in on a dust bowl in Bangladesh. Makes no runs, obviously, and then never gets another test again. There's definitely a way to blood in these new players, and I think Scott Boland is a classic example. Like I'm sure you can go through other examples where it hasn't worked as well, obviously. But when they are going to blood these players in, which they have tried to blood a lot of these guys in, it's probably trying to make it as easy for them as possible because Test cricket is so tough. Clearly,
I couldn't agree more. Like I said,
but they also don't help themselves when you. Well, it doesn't help the fans when you see people like we've had, and I've spoken about these players like Ben Duckett, like Saqib Mahmood, like James Vince. You could reel off almost a whole team playing in the Big Bash.
doing well.
That's more important than trying to go for a test place.
And you know what? It worries me when I quote Kevin Peterson, but I'm about to. He always said that because he often got criticised, right, for playing franchise cricket over playing county cricket, whatever, and he was obviously good enough anyway to score runs no matter what the form of the game was. But he made a point about that, and he's like, you know what, you've only got like a 10-year working life as a cricketer, and so like I kind of understand like the lure of money, to get to say, right, come to Australia and earn a few bob. But then on the other side of the argument is like, so the English ECB need to work on strategies to kind of keep the players there if they want to get them good at the red ball game, and that strategy can't just be, oh, well, you should think about your country. They can't necessarily feel some grand sense of patriotism because it's not going to work. They need to make some. Think about this as a business. These are employees. These are people who are making a living playing cricket, right? They've got to look after themselves. They've got to look after their families. They've got to look after retirement, all sorts of stuff, right? So you've got what do they do? Like if you're a free agent, it makes perfect sense to go to the IPL, to go to the BBL.
You need to make it work to make it like England Test cricket to be the most appetizing thing in the world.
Yeah.
Because players can go and play hit and giggle until they're 40 or more.
Yeah.
So they can that's when they can make their big bucks, is after their test career is finished and they go 34, 35, 36, whatever.
Test cricket, you should be the prime of your career when you're playing test cricket. You're right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Before that, then you go and play franchise stuff. And so your focus should be on test cricket if you want to be you play the best. But unfortunately, that what we're getting through now, and I think that's across all countries, is that players are coming in and wanting to play the short form because they can make a quick buck. And in the nets, they're playing ramp shots. They're playing.
But that's the thing, right? Like making a quick buck, but there's also like buying a house. There's also like securing your future for your family, sending your kids to a good school, etc., right? And
so that's what I'm saying. Why don't they make test? They give Test cricket the contract a bit more, not more. I'm sure the ECB has money, especially after they made the 100 and whatever they call their 2020.
I'm just back to the T20. Well, I suppose T20 versus Test cricket point almost. I think I'd argue that you can both of them lend hand in hand with each other. Look at the Australian team. There's about 7 or 8 players that were in the final of the T20 World Cup that are now playing Test cricket for Australia. Similar with New Zealand, right? I think the T20, it is a thing now, and it is a thing that cricketers have to kind of do almost, or a lot of them have to do to make this living. But I also think that there's certainly players now in Test cricket, like see Rashad Pant, even Dave Warner came through T20 cricket, that now actually changing Test cricket for better, making it more exciting, making it using ramp shots, all this kind of stuff. And I think that there is a balance to be had, and they can actually lend each other and coexist quite comfortably.
Yeah, I mean, other countries do it better. What is it about England? Why struggle?
Well, I think they basically got two teams essentially. Like they've for most of last summer, they had, during the COVID, I know it was COVID and that kind of thing, they'd had a white ball team and a red ball team. And I actually think that you can, like Australia's somewhat proving this, that you can kind of carry form over between the New Zealand as well to a certain extent. They carried their white ball form into their red ball form quite comfortably.
The thing is that Australia's players who play both are all world-class players. So that's sort of so they'd be very lucky with the fact that Pat Cummins, Josh Hazlewood and Mitchell Starc can all...
Josh Hazlewood wasn't a T20 player until the World Cup. He played three T20s for Australia.
But David Warner, batters, David Warner,
David Warner, Labuschagne. They're all comfortable in playing. Even Mitchell Marsh can play both forms. I mean, he showed that really. So I mean, I'm taking the mickey out of him earlier, but I'd have him in a Test side. If England had somebody like him, I'd love it. Which they haven't got at the moment. We could go around the circles with T20 and Test match, argument. But England they've just got to find a way of getting these. I can't see there's supposed to be youngsters coming through, like this Lions team that they've got out in Australia at the moment. They haven't utilised them at all. Zach Crawley did not play in that first game at Brisbane. So there you go. Why did he not? If you're worried about Hamid and Roy Burns, who haven't exactly set the world alight at the top of the order, why wouldn't your backup opener not be playing in that first game and saying, right, there you go, mate, get some runs under your belt and get used to playing in Australian conditions?
That also goes back to the fact that they wanted to have the first test at the Gabba. So which meant they had to quarantine. They could have flown into Sydney or Melbourne, and then they would have had 14 days to play the Victorian or, the Australian Prime Minister's 11 or, the New South Wales team or something, warm-up matches that could get these guys into speed, up to with conditions and all that kind of thing.
But that's the sort of planning. I know the games are thick and fast, and they're Test match after Test match, but they should have possibly come here earlier. I don't know how many of the players, because we had the T20 World Cup. There are umpteen players that they could have chosen for that T20 World Cup who would have still made England a very good chance of winning that tournament. There are hundreds and hundreds of T20 players across England who could fit in that side. Jason Roy is never going to won't play Test cricket again, I wouldn't have thought. So he's in there. You've got other people like Tom Banton. I could reel them off. Alex Hales, Ben Duckett, Owen Morgan, one after the other. Saqib Mahmood,
David Willard,
Adil Rashid. So you let all the other guys who are going to be in the Test squad go to Australia 6 weeks before, so they can play on plastic pitches like David Warner suggested, which is not a bad idea, to be honest. That's not a bad idea. I know that was a little bit tongue in cheek, but
that must have felt terrible. I mean,
Oh, mate, I just wanted to go and shove his bat up his ass, to be
you have
quite
to
honest.
suffer the ignominy of getting bowled out for 68, but then have to listen to David Warner
Tell you.
cricket. Oh, that must have been awful. Stuart Broad, I would have done one. I would have done one myself, and I would have said, I just put it slightly out off stump and make you play around your pad. But second slip swings away. So what do England need to do for Sydney then?
So I watched back the Edge, that documentary on the England team that won out in Australia. And I think just because I wanted to get a bit of perspective on what I took from it was a lot of the guys that won in that series also had already played in Australia and already got beaten heavily in Australia. So I think what you can take from this is get the guys that are going to be there for the next Ashes. You like your Crawley, like your Hamid, and get them battle ready and hardened for the next Ashes.
Yeah,
is what I do. I think because by the time that Ashes that won 5-0, their top five were all battle hardened pros. You had Collingwood, Bell, Trott, Peterson, Andrew Strauss, and Alistair Cook.
Yeah,
they were all had made runs all over the world by the time they got to Australia for the Ashes.
The other thing they had was a world-class spinner, and that's one thing they haven't looked at as well over the last 4 years. Is where's the next spinner coming from? Obviously, Graham Swan was.
We talk about good places to blood newbies. If you want to blood a new spinner, Sydney's probably the place.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, Australia thinking of playing Mitchell Swepson at Sydney. So why is Matt Parkinson? He's not even on the Lions tour, I don't think, is he?
No.
Or what you call a Lions tour? I don't know.
BBL? Is he out? Is he playing for the?
No, I don't think so.
There
is the this is the other. I mean, England have been, as I said before, there are players who would be perfect for playing Test cricket who aren't playing Test cricket, like Adil Rashid and Tyrell Mills, who's one of the quickest bowlers in the world.
Yeah, he is.
And he actually when that tour 2010-11, I remember there was a story going around that he almost broke Alistair Cook's arm in the nets. That's how quick he was then.
That's the thing, right? Yeah, they're probably going to need to try and find some batters, and whether that's them saying, right, we're going to persevere with the ones that we've got, or we're going to try and blood some new ones. But yeah, I mean, series is gone, so they can kind of chop and change a little bit, and Australia probably do the same kind of thing, maybe to try and make choices for India and Pakistan. The challenging Test matches they got to play later in the year. Like I said at the beginning, I really genuinely hope for English cricket's sake that they get absolutely belted in Sydney.
I don't.
Over. And because a competitive Ashes is what you want. Obviously, you're not going to get it this time, but I fear that there might be a little bit of papering over some. Maybe someone in that top six will get runs, and then they'll just be like, everything is fine. We'll just carry on the way we have been carrying on. I think something fundamental needs to change, but.
I think there needs to be a bit of perspective as well. Like, I think there's been a number of 5-0s in Australia with better teams than what England have got now. I think the real litmus test for them will be, they've got the West Indies after this and a relatively poor West Indies team at that. I think, look, if they go there and get slapped up, then I think you go, okay, right, this is a complete rebuild.
Yeah.
I think they haven't been good, and they haven't been good at all. But there's been a lot better England teams that have done,
just
as bad in Australia. So you just need to bit of perspective. I think is important, and especially for the English hierarchy. Like just going back to the Joe Root point, is he up to being captain, all that kind of thing. I don't really see who else can be captain for one, but also what else he could have done as captain. He basically carried the team on his back all year, even with the ball. Like he's had the third biggest run tally in the calendar year.
We can't plan for the future for the next two tests. We can't. It's not.
You've got to what you got.
Just got to cop what we got now, and if we lose 5-0, we lose 5-0. That's it. That's the way it is.
All right. Well, I suppose we better leave it there. Thanks for your time again, and I suppose we'll chat after the fourth test.
Yep, when it's 4-0. See you then.
Bye.